In 2005, Donald Trump was heard on an audio recording basically saying that if he wants something, he just gets it. And he specifically said, basically, if you see a woman that you want, he said, I just grab her by, and, if you have kids around, warning, the pussy. Now, I know that was in 2005, right? So that was, over 20 years ago. But Maya Angelou once said, if someone shows you who you are, believe them. And I frankly think that a lot about Donald Trump can be summed up as far as his policy goes to that quote. We know that he has a serial mistreatment of women, that he frequently degrades women reporters. One time he even called a woman, a reporter, he said, quiet piggy to her. And, if you don't say a question that he likes, then you're stupid. You're pretty, but not that pretty, that sort of thing. But really think about this. If you want something, just grab it by the pussy. I mean, think about what that is saying, that if you want a woman, you just grab her. When you're rich enough or a celebrity enough, you can do it, right? And it seems that we have devolved to this sort of dystopian Darwinian philosophy of the survival of the fittest and the richest, and that with power you have permissions to do things, and that if you want something, you just take it. And I can give you some examples. Please feel free to add your own observations in the comments below, but some I can give you is the kidnapping of Maduro in Venezuela. Just going into a country, if you see you want the oil, you take it. You say it's in the name of other things, but you just grab it. The Gulf of Mexico, you decide it's the Gulf of America. You decide you want Greenland, so you just tell everybody you're going to take it, and you try to. And, luckily, sometimes, you just are able to have enough global support that, he can't do the things that he wants. But really, that's his philosophy, that if he wants something, he just takes it. If he wants to punish a state for not giving him what he likes, or a judge ruling against something that he likes, then he just does it. Colorado had grants that were canceled, just because they, they wouldn't pardon someone that he, wanted to have pardoned. And, again, Lake Ontario, just recently he said he wants to call it Lake America. And really just this attempt to land grab and power grab, I think can really be summed up with that philosophy going back to 2005. And, I think as far as, you might be thinking, well, people change, right? People can change. Of course they can change, but really, Jesus said, by their fruits ye shall know them. And what are we seeing? We're seeing serial patterns of, just thinking this philosophy that if you just wake up and you decide you want to do something, then you just do it. And if you're powerful enough, you can. And, if you're in the camp of, and I just want to say, I was once Republican. I'm not anymore. I campaigned for Bush and Cheney. I knocked on doors. I canvassed areas with Bill Cassidy, and I was on the Mitt Romney delegation when he ran for president. I was a faithful Republican. I don't even know the Republican Party now from what they used to be. It is just a lock and file. You get behind Donald Trump, and I think a lot of people have swallowed their values in the name of obtaining power to do what they want. And is that really what to me, there are feminine energies and masculine energies. And I think we need a lot more feminine energy in this country. And I'm going to say this, masculine energy is wonderful. We need both for balance, right? We need masculine energy and feminine energy. But there's a dangerous point if you have too much of something, right? And this is the worst of toxic masculinity, of taking something, of insulting women, of thinking that you can just power grab and be vulgar about it, right? Think about it. We're talking about, I'm sure that I'm going to get edited for saying the pussy word. I don't use that word, but our president did. And look, is this something that has changed? Has it changed? Has his behavior changed? And, again, we could talk about, I can give you other examples and I will, but these are just some of the thoughts that I had is origins of somebody and believing them when they show you something and when they tell you something about themselves. And I think that Donald Trump takes the absolute worst form and version of masculinity and turns it into something terrible. Because when you can be powerful, but you should use your powers for justness and to be good. You can also use it to be successful, right? You can use it to obtain resources and things like that. But when it just becomes a grab, I mean, that's what I'm seeing, is that there's this sort of feeling in the country and in some pockets of the country and in the world that if you're just powerful enough, then that justifies the action of doing something. And, another example I want to bring up is illegal immigration, this crackdown on illegal immigration. When I was a girl, I remember immigrant workers, they did everything. They cleaned, they worked at the chicken poultry plants. They did basically the trash jobs that nobody else wanted to do. That's not all they did, but from my experience when I was younger, my dad sold ice cream, pushing a cart down the road, right? And he was a very simple man, but very hardworking. And, I was once of the thought that, if you're illegal, you just need to get out of this country. But now I understand that for decades, we've had implicit allowance of people who are here illegally. We may have said that they, are illegal, but we definitely looked the other way at best and supported it. We supported it economically and in the country. We really looked the other way because we knew that, business people could hire immigrants to do the work that nobody else wants to do at wages that Americans, frankly, wouldn't accept, right? And now, after decades of allowing it, we're suddenly, and of them being our neighbors, and of them being our friends, of them being the ones that scrub our toilets. And then now we decide, that we don't want them here and we're going to just systematically get rid of them. And it's not right? Is it a number problem? Because we seem fine with, as Donald Trump said, let's get the more Norwegian immigrants. How come we don't have those? And accepting South Africans, white South Africans who are seeking asylum. But targeting, and the Supreme Court has said that you can be targeted based on the color of your skin. And let me ask you, do you really think that Donald Trump cares about immigrants? I mean, I don't really think he does one way or the other. I think he just knows that when you kind of do what other people want and when you stoke fear in them, it gives you more power. So I think we have, a lot of people, when you fearmonger, I hate to, whenever you bring up like references of comparing Hitler to Trump, you really run a risk, but I'm going to say it anyway. When Hitler's rise to power was following the defeat of Germany in World War I, and the world punished Germany, possibly excessively following World War I. I mean, Germany, of course, we know had done terrible things, but they were punished so harshly that they economically struggled so much and they were vilified. And when Hitler got started, he wasn't the Hitler that we think of today. He was very popular. He was named Time Magazine Person of the Year at one point, right? And he rose on the coattails of nationalism. He said, he was like, we're good people and we, a Christian state and we deserve to be, respected and, that sort of thing. And we're good people, we're strong, and and found a scapegoat, okay? And the scapegoat that Hitler found were Jews. And he unified Germany based on the hatred and fear of other people. So if you wonder why do people compare Trump to Hitler, that's one of the reasons why. I don't know who said this, but basically, I hope someone can find the quote for me and add it in the comments below. But I heard if you can make somebody, hate another person more than themselves, then they'll be happy staying poor. And I think that Trump really has a lot of people, let me back up. Like I said, I campaigned for multiple Republican presidential campaigns and such. And I remember hearing Hillary Clinton call Republicans deplorables. And I remember Barack Obama saying that Southerners and Republicans cling to their God, their guns, and their religion. And I remember thinking, why would they say this? Because when you treat people like shit and you say that you denigrate them and you say they're nothing, you isolate them. You make them feel isolated and you say they're nothing. And Donald Trump spoke in a common language. He didn't try to speak with a lot of flourish. That's one thing that helped him rise to power. He gave a lot of promises. It was very nationalistic, similar to Hitler. People are willing to trade their freedoms for security and promises of economic security. And somehow Donald Trump has people convinced that if we get the illegal immigrants out of here and just take, grab other countries and people by the PUSSY, that we will be powerful. I think that he has brought out the worst in us, but it began with lies. It began with origins of people who were told, you are deplorable, you're pathetic, and your belief in God and your desire to protect yourself with guns and your desire with God, guns, and religion, right? Your church that you go to, it's pathetic, right? That's what the tone was. And I remember being very angry because I thought, how can he possibly say that? This was when I was, in the depths of being Republican. I remember thinking, this is so insulting. He's talking about us like we're idiots. And I truly think that name calling, that deprecation, and let me just say, I think President Obama was a good man. I think I was brainwashed. I think I did not understand things. I think he was a good man, but that was a horrible thing to say. It was a mistake that allowed comments like deplorables from Hillary Clinton and, and that horrible denigrating statement by President Obama. These are the things that allowed Trump to rise to power. And people are seeing, okay, maybe he's not what we hoped for. But you know how sometimes you just hope. I think it's kind of like when you're in a bad relationship, but none of your family supported you, and you don't want to talk to them about the relationship because then it would be admitting that, maybe there were some missteps that were taken and you don't want the criticism. So you hold on to this sinking ship. And Trump may have some successes and some wins, but this is a sinking ship because when you mistreat other people, are we going in a good direction in this country right now? I don't think so. And is this what we want, where we have this philosophy? Do we want our children to think that if you just want something that you just take it? Isn't that the bully on the playground that everybody dreams of standing up to? The one who just shakes people down for their lunch money because they can. And is that what we want? I think what we need is more of the feminine energy, and that means female leadership, but it also means just feminine energy in men too. We need to have strength, but also compassion and some unification. And right now, everybody, I hear so many people, the ranchers are upset about the beef, and that's a whole other conversation I can talk about. But I think what we need is a bridge. And a couple of years ago, it was when this last time that Trump ran for office against Biden, and people were, talking, and I was in Seattle. I used to live in Louisiana, and now I'm in Seattle. And so I've seen both sides, and I remember saying, I think I could possibly be a bridge to like a Google translation of, a translator between like English and Spanish or whatever languages of conservatives and liberals. And they were like, well, why, why is Trump even in the picture right now? And I said, well, a lot of Republicans and conservatives and Southerners were made to feel like they were stupid. And they were basically like, well, yeah, it is stupid. And I was like, but you can't call somebody stupid. You may not like a policy and you may disagree with something, but if you just blanket statement that they're pathetic, their God, their guns, and religion, things all very important to them. Are you going to make any friends? Are you going to win anybody over? And they're like, and I said, you have to have conversations. And I remember someone specifically telling me, I don't want to have a conversation with them. And I said, well, then you know what? He's probably going to win. Because if we're not willing to engage with people and have that conversation about why they are supporting him still and what we can do, to bring some consensus, then he's going to stay in power. And I really think, I'm not a fortune teller. It didn't really take common sense to understand that that's what was going to happen. So is that what we want? And do you agree? Do you see any truth to what I'm saying, that philosophy, that statement that he made in 2005, that if you want a woman, just grab her by the pussy? That's what he said. Is that what we want? And is that the philosophy? Is that what's guiding this president in the decisions that he makes? And I think it is. Gaza, same thing, a land power grab with Jared Kushner and others looking at Gaza like a real estate development and taking advantage of global challenges and seeing how can I get this to benefit me financially instead of what's going to make for world peace. I mean, of course we want to, as a country in the United States, we want to prosper. But is that how we do it? By stepping on other people? Or is there another way? Thanks.